Remember when this artist reached the top? Or when this other one stole your heart? At the beginning of the 70s, the radio was a box of surprises. You turned the dial, and suddenly an unfamiliar melody hit you right in the chest. It became part of your days, your road trips. Bands and artists who seemed destined for eternal careers, but who ended up leaving just one mark, one song, one single moment of glory. Today, we're going back to that time, to those voices that shone once and still echo in your memory. 13. All Right Now by Free. That guitar riff is probably one of the most recognizable in history. It's the DNA of classic rock distilled in its purest form. And like many rock hits, it had its home in Great Britain. Free was made up of extraordinary musicians. Paul Rodgers had one of the most powerful voices in rock, and Paul Kossoff made his guitar cry in ways few could match.
It's a love, Lord above.
Yet in the United States, this was their only true hit. The song was born out of frustration. The band was playing a festival in Durham, England, and the crowd seemed bored. They needed something to wake the audience up. That same night in the dressing room, they wrote All Right Now in just 10 minutes. Sometimes magic works like that. What makes this song special is its brutal honesty. No unnecessary frills, just a dry drum beat, a solid bass line, a guitar slicing through the air, and a voice staring straight into your eyes.
Hey, we're so happy.
Paul Kossoff died just 6 years later, at 25, from heart problems made worse by drugs. But that riff still plays in stadiums around the world. Every time you hear it, a piece of 1970 comes back to life. Before we move on, we'd love to get to know you a little better. What's your name and how old are you? Drop it in the comments. Let's keep going. 12. Yellow River by Christy. In Argentina, in Chile, throughout the Southern Cone, this song was a phenomenon that broke through any language barrier. One of the first to teach us that English language music could belong to us too. Christy wasn't a person, it was a British band led by Jeff Christy, who had originally written the song for another group. When they turned it down, he decided to record it himself. It was the best decision of his life. There's something about this song's rhythm that feels like motion, like a journey, like staring out a train window watching the landscape rush by. While we lose ourselves in the melody, the lyrics tell the story of a soldier coming home, leaving war behind to reunite with his love by the Yellow River. In 1970, with the Vietnam conflict still raging, that message hit deep. Christy tried to repeat the success for years, but never captured that particular magic again. For millions of Latin Americans, though, this song remains part of the soundtrack of their youth. Hit that like button if you prefer 70s songs to today's music. 11. In the Summertime by Mungo Jerry.
In the summertime when the weather is high, you can stretch right up.
It's impossible to hear this song and not smile. That bouncy rhythm, those mouth sounds, that carefree energy that seems to capture the very essence of summer. Ray Dorset created something unique with Mungo Jerry. The band used unconventional instruments, including a glass bottle played like a wind instrument. The resulting sound was completely different from anything else on the radio. Believe it or not, the song was recorded in a single day, even though Dorset had written it years earlier, inspired by the summers of his youth. One day was all it took to capture that story, one that would reach #1 in countries around the world. It's one of the best-selling songs of all time, with estimates exceeding 30 million copies.
When the weather's fine, you got women on your mind.
Mungo Jerry had a few minor hits afterward, but none matched the universality of this one. And maybe that's okay. Some songs exist to remind us of a specific feeling, This one exists to remind us what summer feels like when you're young and free. Mississippi Queen by Mountain Sand. What you're hearing is perhaps the most famous cowbell in rock history. 4 sharp hits announcing that something massive is about to arrive. And that something was named Leslie West. He was a guitarist of massive physical proportions, and his sound was just as huge. Mississippi Queen was heavy rock in its most primitive and glorious form.
Mississippi Queen! If you know.
This particular song tells of a Southern woman who teaches a young man everything he needs to know. The double entendre was obvious to anyone with ears. Mountain never managed to replicate this chart success, though they remained respected in hard rock circles. What few know is that the famous cowbell almost didn't make it into the song. It was a last-minute idea during recording, and they nearly scrapped it. Imagine Mississippi Queen without those 4 opening hits. Maybe the song wouldn't have gone as far. Leslie West kept playing until his death in 2020. He lost a leg to diabetes but never left the stage. And for those of us who love rock that shakes the walls, hearing this song is our tribute. 9. Vehicle by the Ides of March. And if we're talking about iconic intros, of course we have to talk about Vehicle by the Ides of March. Trumpets, saxophones, and horns blasting non-stop until the voice comes in and you know you're in for a ride with no return. They came from Chicago, a city with a tradition of mixing rock with jazz horns. This song was the perfect expression of that fusion. Jim Petterick, the singer and songwriter, was only 19 when he wrote it. He was young, hungry, and had something to say. And the world listened because the song reached number 2 in the United States, blocked from the top spot only by American Woman by the Guess Who. But here's the truly fascinating part of this story. Jim Petterick never left music. Years later, he founded a band called Survivor and wrote a song for a boxing movie starring Sylvester Stallone. That song was Eye of the Tiger. The kid who conquered the world with one song early in the decade came back to do it again, this time through film. A one-hit wonder who lived an extraordinary life. What other one-hit wonder do you remember? Drop it in the comments. 8. Reflections of My Life by Marmalade.
Reflections of my life.
Few songs have captured the melancholy of looking in the mirror and not recognizing what you see better than this one. And even though it felt so personal, it came from faraway Scotland, where Marmalade had previous success with covers, including a version of the Beatles' Obla Di, Obla Da. But this original was their masterpiece. The production included an effect few had heard before, a guitar solo recorded backward. The resulting sound was ethereal, almost ghostly perfect for a song about loss and disorientation. Meanwhile, the lyrics talk about a world that changed while the singer wasn't looking, about realizing you no longer fit in the place you used to call home, a feeling many of us discover as the years pass. This song put music to that collective disillusionment. Marmalade kept recording for years, but never again cracked the US charts. They remain the authors of one of the most beautiful and saddest ballads of the decade, a legacy worth admiring. 7. Green-Eyed Lady by Sugarloaf. Close your eyes and listen to that Hammond organ. It sounds like mystery, like cigarette smoke in a nightclub, like a woman who keeps secrets she'll never reveal. That masterpiece is the creation of Sugarloaf, a band from Denver, Colorado, far from the traditional centers of rock. Maybe that's why their sound was so different.
Every raging wave that comes.
Green-Eyed Lady runs more than 5 minutes in its original version. It has long, almost jazzy instrumental sections that shouldn't have worked on commercial radio. But against all odds they did, proving the public was ready for something more adventurous. What makes this song special is its atmosphere. It's not just a love song, it's an entire movie compressed into 5 minutes. You can see the green-eyed woman. You can feel the danger she represents. Jerry Corbetta, the keyboardist and songwriter, created a complete sonic world. Sugarloaf had one minor hit afterward, but nothing compared to this psychedelic journey. And maybe they set the bar too high. 6. Love Grows Where My Rosemary Goes by Edison Lighthouse. This is about as close as you can get to a perfect pop song. It has everything: an instant hook, a melody impossible to forget, and just the right length to leave you wanting more. But the story behind it was different. Edison Lighthouse wasn't really a band, it was a studio project, and the singer was a man named Tony Burrows. He was a kind of vocal mercenary, a professional who lent his voice to whoever was willing to pay. In fact, in 1970, he had simultaneous hits with 4 different projects: Edison Lighthouse, White Plains, The Pipkins, and Brotherhood of Man. The day Love Grows hit #1 in the UK, Tony Burrows was on Top of the Pops promoting it. That same week, 2 of his other bands were also charting. The TV producers realized it was the same man in different disguises and banned him. That's how the bubblegum pop industry worked. Everything prefabricated, yet at the same time, magical. The song remains irresistible half a century later, and that says it all. 5. Ride Captain Ride by Blues Image. 73 men sailed out from San Francisco Bay. That's how one of the most relaxing songs of 1970 begins. Blues Image had that coastal softness that decades later would be called yacht rock. It was music for listening with a cold drink while the sun sets over the water. The lyrics tell the story of a mysterious ship whose crew never reveals where they came from or where they're going. It was the perfect metaphor for a generation that didn't know exactly where its destination was. The curious thing is that the 73 men didn't mean anything specific. The songwriter simply chose the number because it sounded good rhythmically. And paradoxically, it became one of the most memorable elements of the song. Despite trying, Blues Image could never recapture the magic of this track. Mike Panera, the guitarist, later joined Iron Butterfly, but nothing in his later career captured this feeling of a journey without a destination. For those of us dreaming of escape in 1970, this song was the perfect soundtrack. A ship sailing nowhere, a ship many of us captained ourselves. 4. Indiana Wants Me by R. Dean Taylor. The police sirens at the beginning of this song caused real problems. Drivers all over the United States slammed on their brakes or pulled over when they heard it on the radio thinking the cops were right behind them. But they were wrong. Instead, they were listening to one of the most iconic songs of the 70s by the Canadian R. Dean Taylor. He crafted a deeply American story. A man who's committed a crime and is running from the law, knowing his time is running out. His creation was cinematic in a way few songs of the era achieved. You could see the scene, patrol lights approaching, the fugitive saying goodbye to his love. Taylor had worked as a songwriter for Motown, writing hits for other artists, until one day he got tired and decided to shine with his own light.
I wish I had you to talk to.
Sadly, that shine lasted only a short while. It's almost poetic. A man who writes about being unable to escape the past, trapped forever by his one big moment. Maybe R. Dean Taylor understood something about fate that the rest of us were only beginning to sense. Subscribe to the channel if you want to explore the one-hit wonders from your favorite year. 3. Band of Gold by Freda Payne. At first listen, it sounds like a cheerful Motown song. The rhythm is danceable, the arrangements are bright. Freda Payne sings with a powerful, seemingly happy voice. But listen to the lyrics, and you realize it's the story of a woman abandoned on her wedding night. Her husband disappeared, leaving her alone with a gold band and an empty room. The contradiction between the upbeat music and the devastating lyrics is what makes this song so powerful. It was soul that smiled while it cried. Freda Payne was an incredibly talented singer who'd been working for years without reaching stardom. This song, written by the legendary Holland Dozier Holland, finally put her on the map. What few know is that the song originally had different, more explicit lyrics about the failed wedding night. They were softened for radio. Freda Payne kept singing for decades, but she never again reached the heights of this hit. The Band of Gold remains her legacy, a symbol of broken promises turned into one of the most danceable songs of the era. 2. The Rapper by the Jaggers.
Hey girl, I betcha.
The Jaggers came from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, far from the glamour of London or Los Angeles. They were a bar band that played wherever and whenever they could, until they wrote this song about a guy who seduces women with his smooth talk, never knowing it would earn them 5 minutes of fame. The rapper in the title doesn't refer to the musical genre that would arrive decades later. It means a smooth talker, a verbal seducer, someone who conquers with words. They rapped that message in an irresistible groove, a blend of rock and soul that made it impossible to stay still. It reached number 2 in the United States. Donnie Iris, the singer, would go on to have a successful solo career in the 80s, with hits like Ah, Leah. But the Jaggers, as a band, never shone again. What's interesting is that the song anticipated something that would come later. That street rhythm, that brash attitude, that celebration of the power of words. Maybe the Jaggers were ahead of their time, or maybe they simply captured something eternal about human nature. The art of verbal seduction never goes out of style. 1. House of the Rising Sun by Frigid Pink. We all knew that Melody the Animals had turned it into a classic back in 1964. Eric Burdon's version felt definitive, impossible to top. Or so we thought. One day, a band from Detroit had the audacity to try anyway. But they weren't going to copy it, they were going to make something completely different. They took that old folk song about a house of ill repute in New Orleans and drenched it in distortion. They filled it with a psychedelic heaviness that transformed it into something almost unrecognizable. It was the heaviest version of House of the Rising Sun the world had heard, and it also climbed to the top. What made it special was its courage. Daring to reimagine a sacred classic took guts that few bands had. Yet Frigid Pink paid the price of the one-hit wonder. They could never escape the shadow of this song. Every later album was compared unfavorably. But for a few months in 1970, they proved classics aren't written in stone. That music can be reinvented and still sound just as good. And that's the end of this journey. I'll leave you here with a video of another oldies playlist if you want to keep the nostalgia going. See you next time.